We are here. This is the Pan-African Leadership Center. This is the brainchild of Daniel Mabono out of Nairobi, Kenya. I am Mwata Kairi. I am excited to have this conversation today with the one, the only, the phenomenal, we call him King, Bishop Joshua Maponga. This brother is phenomenal. He talks about the issue of colonialism and religion and speaks to how we have been colonized through Europeanized religion. We want to move right into the conversation and deal with Black theology, African-centered theology, and African liberation. So we're going to bring him up and we're going to have this powerful conversation about our people and how we've been colonized through the European construct of religion. And the great anomaly is that somehow people assume that Europeans brought religion to Africans, but in reality, Africans brought the idea of religion to Europeans, and they still have not fully comprehended what it means to be human and an elevated spirit in the context of an African reality. Dear brother, it is up to you. I want people to know, those on this side of the waters in the United States is where I'm coming from, to know who are you, what are you all about, and why do you do this profound work of liberating African consciousness in the context of religion and theology. Joshua Maponga.
Thank you very much for extending the invitation to be part of this debate. And I think the time is right, and the time is now that the African offspring, children, need to start to have an honest conversation around the issues of colonization, the impact of colonization, the consequences of spiritual rejection, and the quality of children and products that it is giving us in terms of our political leaders, religious leaders, and also the influence on the academic space. And I think the review must be meticulous. It must be very meticulous, just like you do in a hospital. When you're doing a surgery, you will need to know what you want to cut out and have the correct tools to get to the problem and remove the cancer tumor and stitch it up, and people must normalize again. And I think in the African, this cancer in the form and guise of religion, because had Muslims colonized us, particularly in Southern Africa, we all have been Muslims, just like they did in Tanzania and in Egypt. But because we're colonized by the British, those in these areas are Christians. But you cannot be what you are not. You cannot become anything except what you truly are. And this whole thing of making Africans feel like they are trying to be, or I have become a Christian, or I have become Muslim, or I have become that. It is such a petty conversation based on an artificial understanding of human anthropology. How do you become? I mean, if your name is Mr. Jones and my name is Maponga, how do you become a Maponga? You can't. You cannot. Maybe if your daughter could get married to one of my sons, then she could have a child to look like the Mapongas. But for her to say, I will become a Maponga, it's impossible. Therefore, Africans in our fundamental praxis of thought must not even think that it is possible to become a Christian, because Christianity is a project between missionaries and mercenaries.
Deep, right? The idea,
resources.
Yes, becoming that, right? This is powerful. How do you become a Christian, right? And so this notion of Europeanization of an African construct of how to connect with a divine being is something that we really have to interrogate deeply. Because I think that too often we think that somehow becoming like the oppressor is somehow elevating us and liberating us. And in reality, it is another form of incarceration. And you said clearly that if we had been colonized by an Arabicized version of Islam, we would be that, but we would try to become that. But the problem I see is that we try to become European and not understand how to be divine. Brothers and sisters, Brother Joshua Maponga is joining us from Johannesburg. He's been traveling. We want to thank him for finding a space to include us in this conversation. He is international. He's phenomenal, and we're having a deep dive discussion about how we colonize in the context of religion. Now, you said something that several things that are powerful, and I want to talk about this issue of eating the fruit with the lights on. But before we get there, I want to get into what you're saying about the idea of religion, foreplay, and colonialism. Articulate that.
When I use that illustration, to be more precise, I'm looking at a marital, conjugal rights in an event where people are married and they're practicing their marriage rights. And how do you have a meaningful relationship with your wife or with your husband? The concept of foreplay is preparation. It is intended to get the person ready. And in this event, colonization sent out missionaries first into the villages. The missionaries, their job was firstly to preach, introduce Jesus, and recruit the men to come into the system of religion, and better still, to educate the community, because some of the missionary schools were some of the best schools in Africa, to prepare the black man so that when the colonial system starts, it will be able to have access to labor, educated labor, and educated, obedient labor, educated, obedient Christian labor, so that the gods and educated, obedient, religious labor that also knows how to dress and talk like the colonizer. So basically, the church became a training institution in preparation of the colonial institution itself. And the church produced the manpower. And then the state used that manpower to build the colonial system. So when I say religion, particularly Christianity in this instance, is a foreplay colonialism, it then pacifies the conscience of the black man. If a man hates you, he beats you on one cheek, give him the other cheek, love your enemies, forgive those that persecute you, slaves obey your masters. Look at all these kind of theologies that are piled up into the pulpit. And then what do you think is going to become of this man that you have baptized? And even the iconography of a white Messiah makes the white man look like he's the cousin of the Savior, whom you've accepted as your Lord and Savior. How do you fight with a white man when he looks like your Lord and Savior? So Christianity, as it were, became a very, very productive venue where the black mind is whitewashed, literally whitewashed. It is, the conscience is pacified, anger is managed, revenge is removed, land, you don't have to love land, you're going to go to heaven. Jesus is coming soon, take you to heaven, and you're going to live there for forever. So you don't need you don't need the land. And then you start singing songs, take the world, but give me Jesus. So, take everything. I want nothing here. I want everything on the other side. So it postponed our desire for materials into what I call escape theology, where the African is taught how to escape from this land into another land. And you never hear the African being taught, occupy till I come, be heads and don't be tails. And you only inherit the sins of Adam. Why can't we inherit the blessings of Abraham also? So for me, theology, literally, I'm sorry, I've lost in a colonial theological framework, which intends for all practical purposes to introduce the African that you're a sinner, you're going to die, there is hell, there is, and the morale and the attitude of the African is trembled upon. How do you walk up to church every weekend and you're told how sinful, how wicked you are as an African? And what do you think you can perform? Then prayer becomes another docile space or you must not kneel down. And in some of these Catholic churches, they would be beating you up on the bed. Into that submission. And religion is being used to do that, beating people in physically. That these Catholic priests would be whipping people on their backs into submission. You must come in front of me, and me as a pastor, I must pray for you. I must put my hands on you to put a blessing on you. What kind of rubbish is that? And you as a pastor, you're the one who is the father of this house. Your voice is stronger than my voice as a father of this house. Then what does the man become? So we demasculated the men, and we made them into women to an extent that men must even cry and confess that they love Jesus. They love Jesus. When a man confess that he loves another man to a point of crying for that man, we don't do that kind of trash. We don't do that. We don't do that as Africans. So you find that the psychology and the mindset of the African child is the shock up in him, the strength in him, the stand up, bow to nobody except where you're giving respect, and it is due into this colonial form of to survive. This is what you must do, So it became so Christianity, another statement. Christianity is a survival kit for the African to access the colonial system and the colonial wealth. Because if you come to the place dressed up like an African, even the economic world will not accept you. The religious world will disdain you. So you must conform. And Christianity is where we teach people how to conform to the system.
So Christianity then as a tool of manipulation of psychologically grounding the population to see themselves as not being worthy, as not being good. You mentioned the idea of coming from Ephesians, where it says, servants, obey your masters, and not talk about the issue of the power of liberation, that the greater things than these that you do also. I love how you break down the Lord's Prayer. It's a very powerful thing about give us this day our daily bread. But I want to really people to capture what was just said here, right? The idea that through religion, through the teaching of the Europeanized version of religion, it teaches us to be passive, to wait on the pie in the sky, that we will get ours in heaven while they get theirs on earth, and not understand that there is, it clearly says, on earth as it is, which means equal to, but somehow we wait for the moment of death to be able to ascend to this place called heaven. And then you said that by placing a Europeanized version of the Savior, the pacified, soft-looking Jesus, Yeshua, it begins to make us think that somehow if we react or respond against the oppressor, the European oppressor, that we're somehow acting against God. Powerful piece. And some people are saying here, so what is our plan of action? You cannot engage in action until you understand clearly what the problem is. People often want to jump right into what's the plan. The plan, first of all, as you mentioned earlier about in medicine, a doctor must assess clearly what is the problem. Where is it hurting? Where is the disruption? And we're saying here that clearly, and you said it very clearly also, is that this idea that through Europeanized religion, theological constructs, we see ourselves as less than divine. How then do we get ourselves to see ourselves as divine if we don't understand the problem that's blocking us from seeing our true divinity? So the foreplay part. Now, when we talk about this and about eating the rotten fruit in the dark, speak on that. That is a powerful analogy that you use. Speak
about the what?
Analogy. The eating the rotten fruit in the dark, eating the fruit in the dark. I turn the lights on. I love how you articulate that.
No, here where I live in the South, we speak in riddles and we speak in parables, because that's the best way to communicate a message, and you can communicate it clearly. And then I know in some certain spaces it sounds like it's an oxymoron sort of thing, like you're saying two opposite things, but we literally use illustrations to make the point clear. So a man is sitting around, goes to the shop with his friends, and they buy a pocket of apples, and it's late in the evening. They bite the first apple, and then you find that after chewing 2-3 bites, you find that the apple is rotten. Spit it out, try another one again. And the friend who was watching discovered, no, we are wasting and losing all these apples. Let's just switch off the light and let's eat the apples. That illustration, by context, is intended to rebuke the African. Would you rather continue eating rotten apples because you don't want light and information that informs you to the contrary? In other words, you were told these lies. You were told all these concepts, whether they're religious concepts, economic concepts, governance concepts, and you've come to accept them. And when someone looks into these systems and we see the amount of rot that is in these systems, new monsters of legislation that we are beginning to face, same-sex marriage issues, twisted forms of women's rights and etc., twisted education, freedom of entertainment, and all these things that actually are eating the core of our African value system. And when you mention that these things are rotten, the Christian, the educated friends are saying, Maponga, please, just switch off those lights. Shut up. Don't talk about it. Let life continue as it is. We're already enjoying some ice cream. We're enjoying some entertainment. We got some fashion. We can now put some lipstick and some lip. We can also have some bank cards and some cars. There's some benefits here, man. What you squeaking all about? What you making noise about this African Renaissance and Pan-Africanism and Sonkofa returning? But just switch off the damn lights. It's a polite way of telling me, no, shut up. Let's just eat these rotten apples. As long as we don't see the rot, then it won't affect us.
So many of our people do not want to interrogate the fruits that we are consuming, that we would rather consume it in the dark. And when people point out that there's some rot here, there is some misteachings here, there's something that is leading us into a level of spiritual malnutrition, and to say this is wrong, all of a sudden that we become the problem. So we have Joshua Maponga saying, they say this, just leave us alone. We're getting our ice cream, we're getting our fruits, we're getting everything, but we don't realize that we're not getting nourished properly into our full spiritual beingness. And so this is how they control us perpetually. And you mentioned the Catholic Church.
And to add on that, also, to add on that, I want to pinch something. I understand these people, my brothers. I understand them very well, because the educational system that they are coming through has already told them that this is the only way and there's no other way. So you're already dealing with psychologically conquered people who are not intending to get into power, into politics, to change the system. They get into the system so that they can conform to the system and force the Africans to comply to it. So are all the ministries in the government. So are all the academic institutions. People go into these institutions not to transform them, but they go into these institutions because they're now the new stakeholders. They are the new directors. They're the new Uncle Toms who are managing the system. And these are the people who are telling us, switch off the lights and let us just eat these rotten apples. Don't bother our consciences. Don't remind us who we are as Africans. Don't take us back there. Don't talk about slavery. Now move on, But if a fool breaks your leg, here's another one for you. If a fool breaks your leg and he prays for another chance, you may end up on a wheelchair.
Brother Bishop, I am so appreciative of your insight, your intellect, and your interrogation of a system of mental and psychological as well as spiritual incarceration, that we get so locked into a system and we assume that somehow we're doing a great work. And you're right. Many of our people do mean well, but you can have good intentions and still be very destructive. And so we have to do this job of interrogating to understand what is really happening here and how can the oppressor bring to the oppressed some level of elevation when the oppressor's position is based on the oppressed being oppressed. And so Dr. Carter G. Woodson says that if the Negro in the ghetto looks to the hand that pushes him in the ghetto to get out of the ghetto, he will never get out of the ghetto. So this is a powerful day. I want to thank my brother for being here. It is an honor to be here, talk to you directly. It is almost surreal after watching so much of what you do, what you talk about. Something you said I think is important right now. That is that you talk about those that are educated are some of the most damaging people to the entire movement. Speak on that, about how some of the most educated among us are some of the most dangerous among us as well.
What makes them dangerous is the concept of the X and the trees. That the trees kept on thinking that they were disappearing, not knowing that the one that was killing them had a handle like them. You know, the X of colonialism is now in the hands of Black people who are benefiting from the colonial system. And they are now the ones who are chopping us down. So in as much as when we see them, we think that they are one of us. They are together with us. But in mindset, in estate, in trustee form, in benefit of the system, they are the CEOs. They are the presidents of countries. They are the directors of companies, of insurances, and etc. And they are shareholders of these organizations. And there's no way they can sit around and destroy these systems, because now they are the custodians of the very same system that is destroying the African. Isn't it funny that some of the African countries went to war to fight against colonialism, only to have their own liberation heroes come into these countries and become the new colonizers? They literally walk into the office where the colonizer used to be, and they enforce the same fishing laws that the colonizer designed. They enforce the same diamond and gold mining laws. Black men must not hold diamonds, must not hold things. He must have a license. To hell with licenses. Who wrote that law? So you find that as a government official, you are in your office and you're not there to help your Black people. You are now actually part of the problem to the Black people, because you are now enforcing the laws that were designed by the very same system that you went to war to fight against. Then what is this all about? What is this of fake independence all about? If it just changes hyenas with foxes, at the end of the day, we got rid of these hyenas and now we have a fox, but the chickens are still disappearing.
So the acts of colonialism are in the hands of so-called intellectual Africans. And so we've swapped out the hyena for the fox, right? This is powerful, because somehow we believe that we're doing some great work. And in reality, we're doing the bidding of the oppressor. Now, let's talk about something that you really are passionate about. And you talk about farming, and talk about liberation and economic liberation. You talk about the various governments. And so this is what you're hinting on right now, of so-called independent nations in Africa, on the continent of Africa. But in reality, they're simply doing the bidding of others. But what is it that you say that we can do, taking our spirituality, understanding our divine presence, our essence, and promote economic, psychological, and spiritual liberation for our people? Let's start with the economic part about farming. You love to talk about that. Go for it.
When we go for land, there are three estates that you have. The estate between your ears, that goes for your thinking, the quality of information, and the seeds that you're planting in your mind. The second estate is the estate of reproduction, longevity, posterity, continuity. Who is planting in your field if you are a woman, and in what field are you planting if you are a man? And the third field and estate is the estate underneath your feet, which is the land itself. It is very dangerous to give a man the land underneath his feet when he is not in control of the land between his legs and the land between his two ears. The concept of land, therefore, to an African, it is our source of wealth. From the land we came, to the land we shall return. We don't own our land owns us. Land gives us access to the spirituality that we desire. That is our waters for cleansing. That is our mountains and high places and sacred sites. That is our seas also and our air. So the African spirituality is this way, it is directly linked to land, inheritance of land. When a child is born, their umbilical cord is buried onto the ground. That becomes the first deposit that they have. Before we can bury your body when you die, we first of all put a deposit to say, I am part of this land. Therefore, Africans and spirituality cannot be separated. We cannot even wash. I want even to say very clearly, it is illegal to read the Bible and read the Torah when you don't have land, because land is the purpose of theology. It is Adam, it is Eden, and then it is Eve. Without land, it's illegal even to reproduce. If someone says, I love you, a boy says, I love you to my girl, I always tell my girls, don't say why, say where do you want to love me? Because love needs a physical address. You can't love me on a tree. You can't love me on WhatsApp. You need to find a physical address where love will take place. Therefore, land is the reason for existence. A lion would pee around an estate. Then, after using pee for marking territory, you can use sperm for reproduction. You know, that's how life must be. You need territory first before you can do reproduction. The reason we're talking about crime and immorality and all these things is because we have reversed the estate and ownership of land as a reason for existence. When you are marrying a woman, you don't marry her as a husband. You marry a woman to your land. She gets married to the very soil on which you own, because her children will become the inheritors of that land. So when you remove land from the African concept of spirituality, you've actually reduced us to things. You've reduced us to non-entities at all. We have no reference to our history. We have no reference to our graves. We have no reference to our wealth. We've nothing left. In fact, I would rather throw away all the ministries in government and remain with one ministry only. That's the ministry of land. Because with land, you have water. With land, you have mining. With land, you have housing. With land, you have agriculture. With land, you have minerals. With land, you have roads. Without land, just shut up. You got nothing. There's nothing.
So this
and the economy,
Mhm.
the economy of the Bible and the economy of the African is founded on land, founded on wealth, and wealth is land. Without land, you don't even return tithe.
So we have a duty and responsibility to cultivate and honor the land, and with the land, then we have our true liberation. How has our theology moved us away from understanding what you just said about the power of the land and our responsibility?
Very interesting view you're bringing right there. How did our theology allow me to disqualify that statement? I can't call it our. Just allow me to remove the our part, because I don't think we were involved in designing that theology. We don't know the intentions of that theology. We are only seeing the impact and the ramifications of that theology. But let's call it for what it is. How has colonial theology moved us here? Number one, it has moved us here by postponing our wealth from earth to heaven. Let's put that as point number one, with an eschatological message that says on earth you are worth nothing, you only have value on the other side. And secondly, the theology has made us to say, do not put value on earthly things, but put value on spiritual things. And those spiritual things are only in the definition of the colonial library again. Because if it was really spirituality, that comment, you cannot practice spirituality without land. And ultimately, our theology was being propagated by those who were disenfranchising us in terms of our land. So how could they conflict themselves by teaching us to love land, yet they were stealing the same land away from us? So it's a project, well thought out project, which included, take the land away from them, build industries, move the men away from their traditional homes, let them come to town, they can look for employment so that they can pay taxes, move the women to where you want. By the time the men come back to the villages, they found that their women had been dumped in some small little non-productive pieces of land, and their white man was now farming on top of the graves of their forefathers. So it was a project which actually destroyed the African spirituality to its core. I thank you.
So thank you for the correction, the realignment, the reassessment. We talk about their philosophical understanding and not our understanding. So now, when we have this situation where we understand and comprehend our responsibility and obligation to do the cultivation, what is now challenging us as Africans from really benefiting economically from all that is happening? That the Europeans are coming in, they're getting the gold, they're coming in, they're getting the coltan, the tantalite, the uranium, they're getting all of these things out of the soil. What is preventing us from benefiting from the divine source that God has given us to really build African civilization where it should be?
Two problems, if not three problems. The first problem are the Uncle Toms, who are the custodians, who are actually assisting the very colonial system to abuse the African resources. But let me expand on that and say that the quality of our industry in Africa was never designed to be a beneficiating industry, which will work end to end in terms of resource, from raw material to processing to final product. Remember that the European Industrial Revolution sits on the African raw material supply, so that the jobs we are talking about in Europe are a result of the raw materials that you're getting from the African continent and from Latin America and etc. So I worked in the steel companies in London. We were manufacturing bolts for aeroplanes and ships and I would actually see the steel there manufactured, made in Zimbabwe. So in as much as we can be talking about all those factories in Luton that are high consumers of steel, if you get closer to them to run those jobs, you need the materials, the raw materials. So where are the raw materials coming from? The raw materials are coming from Africa, and the final products are in Europe. Then bring them back as cars, bring them back as gadgets, bring them, and the African can't even afford them. So we need to understand again the psychology of poverty, of raw material harvesting. And I want to say this loudly to all African leaders: stop digging more, start manufacturing more. You don't need to produce as much minerals as you are producing. You need to beneficiate those minerals. It's amazing that up to date, we still don't have our own aeroplanes in Africa, yet all the aluminum, all the minerals, people are threatening us at the Security Council with atomic bombs and nuclear bombs, yet 50% of that uranium and plutonium and etc. is dug right in our nostrils in Africa. We're not even allowed, by the way, to produce one nuclear warhead, because apparently we're going to kill ourselves with these nuclear weapons. Now they take the same minerals and then they make these weapons. But then what are you doing in our universities if you can just compete with the best in the world, if need be, buy the technology from the West and protect yourself? So we have an economic systems and structure in Africa that does not respond directly to the raw material that it has. It has to send it out and then bring it back again. Our governments must start learning how to buy industries, how to buy manufacturing industries, processing industries, and create value chains from our raw materials and send out of Africa final products which are benchmarked by the prices which we can determine for ourselves, because we are the final producers of those commodities. So we have a weak link. We have a weak link of we have the material, but our schools are not producing professionals who can add value to these minerals and create industry. So here we are looking for jobs, but trucks and trucks are passing our streets carrying chrome, coal, copper, aluminum, magnesium, tin, coal, and etc. out through the borders. And then you say we have no employment. Of course, you never have employment until you learn how to convert your raw materials into industries. I thank you.
So, I mean, this is on spot on, right? The idea that when you know that you are divine, that you are worthy, you walk with that majesty, you walk with that power, you walk with the understanding that without what you have, the world does not operate, does not function. Without the resources of Africa, the world falls flat. It has nothing, right? When we talk about the great wealth, you mentioned taking the resources and shipping it out and manufacturing it someplace else and bringing it back as gadgets, bringing it back as cars, is something that to me is an abomination to the divine essence of who we are as African people. And we allow this to happen over and over and over again. God has given us this abundance, but we allow others to plunder it. And you know, there's a proverb out of Ghana. The Akan say, "It is a fool who lets somebody else sell him his own tomatoes." And so we sit foolishly.
Can I make a call to diaspora? Can I make a call to diaspora? Like Joseph, who went to Egypt and became the food basket to serve his own brothers. This is a time where all the black men out there, all the black women out there in Europe and in the States, this is time, you guys, you pack your bags and you come back home. Bring the technologies with you. Bring the sciences with you. Bring the skills with you. Stop the hemorrhage of raw materials out of Africa. You have the skills. You have the knowledge. Diaspora is the savior of Africa. And I'm not mixing my words. Attach yourself to a government, bring your skills down here. A man with one eye, hell no, is a king amongst the blind. The little information that you have will thousands on the continent. So we're making a call to diaspora. Come on, guys. If they give you 10,000 hectares, I'll give you 100,000 hectares. Build as many studios as you want. Feed the whole opera, Jay-Z's, anybody. But just bring some skills with you. Ben Carson, you retired sergeant. When your African brothers are still dying, just bring those skills down here and train someone to do the better job. Thank you.
I share that sentiment, right? I was going to want to talk about epistemology, eschatology, and all of that, but you have hit a serious point. And this point is a serious one for me. That is, we need to make sure that we make the connection, the reconnection back. You said that we were the ones sold down in the bottom of the well, of the pit. And now it's time to rise up, to return and to reclaim our space and to bring what we've learned in this space to be able to help others to ascend. This is our responsibility, and we're losing. This is what we're doing in the Gambia right now. We're doing this all over. We're making these connections because this is the serious work. And I will use another analogy. This one, Bishop. There were these scientists who were engaged in the process of getting water out of the river, and they kept purifying the water, trying to make sure the community had good drinking water. But one scientist said, this is an act of futility. We're doing this over and over again. So he left. He went upstream. And when he went upstream, he discovered that there was a dead cow at the tributary to the river. When he removed the dead cow from the tributary, the water downstream became pure. My point is that too often we are spending our lives at times in toxic places trying to purify that, as opposed to going upstream. As you're saying to me, going into Africa is going upstream to make sure that everything downstream becomes made better. This is our major calling. Go ahead, elevate us to talk about in the diaspora. What should we do? How do we connect? And why is it so important?
And unity is priceless. Unity is priceless. One grain of grass you can break easily, but once you tie them into a bundle, you can make your brooms, and it's difficult to break. The power of unity with understanding is that where you are weak, I become strong as a brother. And we begin to share common strengths as we are sharing common weaknesses to create a nation that is safe for us and our children. The value of unity, even for the African, in terms of a united, Africa, reduces the red taping that we are struggling with right now. in terms of we even find it difficult to move goods from one country to another country. Black people still sitting on the colonial chairs, enforcing the same laws of trade, which were left by the colonizers who were here. There you have a president of what country, president of what country. You can't move this one here. You can't buy this. You can't do this. So we're back again in the same problems that we're trying to run away from. And these politicians, in some cases, are a nuisance. The other day I was feeling like I can put all of them in one big basket and go and dump them in the sea, because they are impeding our progress. Because they go around these United Nations and what, taking pictures, taking pictures, instead of discussing issues of strategic value and importance, the restoration of a nation that has been downtrodden for 400 years, and you have it in your hands to begin to rewrite their narrative, and you go to take pictures. You take African money to repair some idols in France as a president of Africa. What a sickness of the highest order. So the idea of us coming together as Africans, it is symbiotic, so that we can share common good, share common knowledge, share common skills, begin to create an economy of knowledge amongst ourselves, to which we can graduate our children to own their own resources, eat what they produce, and produce what they eat. Right now, you find some farms in some certain countries, they're planting tea. How can you plant tea? Who eats tea? Fertile land for planting food. You're planting tobacco. You plant because you want forex. Okay, fine. Then you sell the tobacco. Then you don't even bring the money. You must now use the money to buy the food and come back home. So it's not sustainable. That kind of a business model is not sustainable. Where basically you are saying Africa must produce stuff which they can't even use. They can't consume that stuff. So what's the use of us as Africans building, planting tea, planting flowers, roses, because the Queen of London wants some flowers and some roses. Then you must plant roses. To hell with roses, man. She can go and find her own things in the backyard. Plant food. Sustain yourself with surplus. Then we can do the peripheral issues that are non-consumable. But food security will become very crucial and very important. I thank you.
Bishop, a powerful point here. Do you know that Hershey's chocolate in the United States makes more money in 1/4 of a year than the entire country of Ghana makes on cocoa for an entire year, right? And there are stipulations placed on how they can and cannot, the farmers, use that cocoa, because it has to be exported out. That is the greatest form, again, of abomination. That is slavery by another name. And so you speak to that very well. I know I triggered something in your thinking.
Even on the cocoa, it would have been better if the African was able to determine the price of his own cocoa. It's amazing that you do all the farming, you do all the struggling, you do everything, but the day you go to sell it, the one who is buying is the one who decides how much he's willing to buy it for. So if I had power in my hands, I would just fold my arms. Honestly, I would fold my arms. You want my cocoa? You want mine? You take it at my price, or else jump in the sea.
That's it.
Better still to get the industries that are beneficiating that cocoa. By the time we're selling it out, at least let it be a powder. At least let it be a liquid of some sort. Then you guys can just put it into the various forms and but let the core of the business be founded on the ground where the people are suffering to produce the same resources.
Very good. So here's our challenge. As we get ready to close, I know that time has come for us. Brother Bishop Maponga, I would love to continue our conversation. I have your number locked in. Don't be surprised when I do reach out to you. We're going to do some great things in the Gambia. You asked about coming to that. We're doing Homecoming Gambia. I want to
come to Gambia. I want to come to Gambia.
You said that. I heard you when you said it, and I extend an invitation for you to be one of our keynote speakers for the event on African Liberation Day. So we'll talk more about what that what that really entails. And tied to that is, tell us as people of the diaspora, what is it that we can do to bring our skill set, our genius, to the continent? How do we start the process? Many people find it difficult to do that because they have all of the excuses as to why it can't be done. How do we do it, and where can we start?
Meet in groups of 5s and in groups of 10s, or as individuals or as families. Walk up to the bank and get a loan. Identify a business in Africa, invest. In the next 5 years, pay back the loan, relocate, full stop.
I was waiting for the deep dive, but you just said just come together, organize, get the loan,
get yourselves organized,
and then
organized.
Many things that
access
we can get into.
Yes. Get yourselves organized. Access the finances. Identify. Maybe what you need to do for a start is to come to Africa now for a tour, and look into the areas of your specialty. What are you specialized in doing right now in the States? Come to Africa and find where your skills are most appreciated. You're not going to be competing with the multinational companies, the Coca-Colas and the Pepsis. It's fine. You're going to start from scratch and go back home, identify a funder, access your loans, come back here, acquire some land, talk to some local producers, manufacture, produce. I guarantee in less than 5 years, whatever loans you'll have created, you should be able to pay them back with a good interest. Just like the Israelites. Before you go out of Egypt here, go back to those guys and do some, collect something, man. Don't just walk away from this land empty-handed. Pick up something, take some gold, take some silver, and then get out of that land.
Yeah, so you are currently in Johannesburg, but you're based out of Zimbabwe?
Yes, I'm in Zimbabwe.
Okay, but you're in Johannesburg. So we want to come to Zimbabwe. We want to come to Joburg. What do we do with you in Zimbabwe that we can come and say? You say that you have a hectare-acre forest to start some work. What do we do? How do we get started? What does it look like?
What we can do is what the government is prepared to do and what the people are willing to do and prepared to do. There are doors of opportunities available, from producing of lithium batteries, big business, turning coal into fuel, big business. We've just discovered oil now in the country. You can think around those businesses. We have just met up our wheat quota for 13 months now, big business. We have food basket for the South, gold galore. Almost 60% of the country is mineable. Diamonds, platinum, gold, iron ore, tin, magnesium, name it. You want the air, there is enough solar in the air. You can even sell us airtime if you are into telecoms. We have enough clean water. The Zambezi is always flowing, non-stop. Into lots of business around that, from fisheries to hydro power and etc. The land, vegetation, game reserves, farming. So the 3 industries are quite viable. The industries of the skies, there's enough there. The industries of the land, there's enough there. The industries of water, there's enough.
This is what we needed to hear. Too many of our people believe that there's nothing in Africa. And whenever I say, let's go to the continent, they say, why am I going there? There's nothing over there. You just articulated in one country all of the things that are available that could be harvested and utilized for liberation.
86 of the most sought after minerals in the world. Zimbabwe has them. 86 of them.
86 of the most sought after minerals are in one space. Now imagine an entire continent, and then we ask the question, where has the land been blessed? Right? Because you cannot find these resources in England, in Europe. You cannot find them in the United States. you can find them where God has ordained the people. This is where theology, when it moves back to its center, reminds the people that they are the divine people of the universe. Brother Bishop, please give us a closing thought here as we get ready to transition. I don't want to bite all of your time there in Joburg. People are waiting for you because your presence is so profound. But give us something to think about as we close out.
I would want to close by saying every time you try to be like me, you are forfeiting me the opportunity to experience you. Black child, stop trying to be a white man. Stop trying to be like a white man. The white man is not trying to be like you. In unity, we stand. In identity, there is purpose. And we can bring up our children in the truthfulness of their own identity. And a person without identity will be chased and pushed anywhere by the winds and the winds of change. And we are not Caucasians. And Caucasians are not Bantu. They don't have the spirit of Buntu. We are Bantu. So let us be human, and let us be humankind, kind to each other as Africans. Let us be mankind, kind to each other. And let us not allow our generation to extinct in our own eyes. If we are not careful as Africans, we're going to end up as coconuts, brown on the outside and white on the inside. The culture of the white man will consume you, black man. It will consume you, and his appetite and his medicine, and you remain as zombies on the faces of the earth. Preserve yourself as an African person. Preserve yourself. Be proud. You have a space, you have a continent, you have a contribution to the past, to the present, and to the future. With those few words, I thank you.
We thank you, Brother Bishop Joshua Maponga, for those powerful words as to how we can elevate ourselves. We have listened to for the past 40, 50 minutes to one of the most brilliant minds that we have in our time. Bishop Joshua Maponga is encouraging us to understand that we are to unite, that we are one people, that we are divine people, that we are children of the Son, and that we have no business playing backseat to anyone, that we do not have to walk around and pretend to be who we are not, because if you be who you're not going to be anything. And that this is the call. This is the time is now to reconnect on the continent, to bring our skills from the diaspora back to the continent, and to be able to reverse the brain drain and begin to help all of us to ascend, to become better. And we do that by understanding that we are sacred and divine. We need not own and honor the theology of the alien, because the alien theology is designed to facilitate their growth, development, and expansion. And it is to also to promote our expulsion. We need to understand that we have been given all that we need to succeed. There's no excuse not to produce. Everything that we have is within us. And we have to recognize that when we have voices like this one, we must listen, attend to, and take action. We will continue this conversation here with our dear brother Joshua Maponga and others in the Pan-African Leadership Center. You see, this brother is doing things all over the world, making things happen. We can see all those activities. We want to make sure that we also know that we are children of those who would not die. We have been given the call to do the thing that is great in the moment called now. What are you going to do with your calling? Thank you, and we will be in touch soon, family. Peace. We have ended. The broadcast